So I guess it's time for us to get going. So welcome everybody. For the top news story, apparently there are natural organisms in the soil that can power lights.
Amazing.
For coronavirus, there are a lot of casualties in jobs, and many jobs may never return. In technology, a new $100 computer goes back to the future. In materials, 3D print experts have discovered how to conduct electricity and light using inkjet printed graphene. And in flight, astronauts and explorers on Mars could eat lab-grown steaks. In environment, there's a luminescent wood that could light up homes of the future rather than using plastics. In biology, we can now use apparently viruses to disarm antibiotic-resistant bacteria. For us as humans, here's some advice on how to de-stress your brain. And on health, apparently high-fat or ketogenic diets could prevent or reverse heart failure. So that's what we'll be discussing. And now for the top news, Richard, what's this about natural organisms in the soil that can power lights?
This, the headline says that this bio battery may be the world's most disruptive technology. That's actually a fairly bold statement, I would say. And the story is that a Spanish biotech company is generating renewable energy from the very soil on which our homes are built. Finally, I guess there's a use for all that lawn. And the name of the company is BIOO, pronounced BIO. And their batteries use soil microbes to generate electricity. And it turns out when the ground that the battery is set in it rains or it's waters, microbes in the soil that feed on decaying plant matter leach into the battery, where the feeding activity creates protons and electrons. And when these are combined with oxygen flowing through holes in the battery, the process generates enough electricity to power lights, computer screens, or small appliances. The goal of BO is to scale up their technology until their soil-powered units can generate all the power that you need for an entire house. They even are doing things that I think are cute. They have applications in potted plants where you could use your potted plant to power your computer.
Jeez, good.
And the part of what is exciting about it, there are two elements that make this better than things like the solar panels. The first is soil microbes don't stop when it gets dark or when the wind stops blowing. So it's continuous power 24 hours a day. And then also, they don't use any environmentally damaging materials like lithium. What they use is graphite and carbon, and these are easy to obtain and are very abundant and very cheap. So finally, these units are going to end up being very cheap as well. Right now, already, city planners are eager to get these installed to things like powering lights in parks and things like this.
Nice.
And uh, again, it's exciting. I hadn't even imagined we would hear about this kind of renewable technology, but here we are. We can get power from the bugs in the ground. How cool is that?
Were
Any
you
comment?
saying it was
I wonder how much,
disruptive? I don't understand why it's disruptive.
I'm sorry?
I don't understand why it's disruptive. You say it's disruptive?
They say it's disruptive because it changes the whole power equation, and it's a new technology, cheap to make, and it will disrupt the implementation of some of the other new technologies.
what's the
More competition,
origin?
the better. The more competition, the better.
Yes,
Yes.
yep.
I think they mean disruptive in a sense of
I guess they can't hear me.
upending the current technologies that are in place. Like, if you have a coal plant and you come with a new kind of technology, it disrupts the coal industry. That they're talking of that kind of disruption.
Yes, and this will not just, the coal industry is already disrupted.
That's right.
This will disrupt the disruptors.
That's right.
I have a question. If you take, for example, if in your example, you had a potted plant, you power your computer, but the energy you take out, is it renewable? And where does that come from? Because the energy equation basically says that's a constant, the available energy. So you can't just take energy out and out without it being renewed in some form.
Well, you're renewing it, and you're renewing it by the the organic material from plants that at the end of its cycle, it decays. And what makes it decay are the microbes. And what they're using is this microbe dealing with the decaying plant matter as a source of energy.
Is this like really tiny amounts, or can you generate fairly large amounts of energy? Do you know, Richard?
They're still trying to, as I say, scale it up to be able to get the kind of power you need to run a house on. The fact that they say they can run small appliances, even if you have small appliances, you have this peak energy charge and stuff like this to get the motors going. So it's not a trivial task.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you.
Okay, moving along to coronavirus. Now, what's this about the jobs because of COVID that will never come back?
This is one of the problems that we're going to have is we know that COVID caused a lot of job losses. And here particularly, they are talking about the food service industry. And the food service industry altogether, there are more than 2 million jobs that have been lost since the pandemic struck. And out of those, they say at least 40% of them will never come back. And the jobs that are lost are particularly people on the bottom, immigrants, and all this other stuff. One example is LA Airport. We've all heard of that. And there's a food service union that covers 4,000 employees, food service employees that work at LAX. Out of those 4,000 that are the regular employees, there are only 500 that are employed now. And again, so this is what they see happening everywhere. And the real question is whether or not these jobs will come back. And there are a lot of people saying they will not. The industries are restructuring themselves. They're figuring out how to operate with smaller staffs and all of this stuff. And this is another case of the implications of the pandemics has changes that will affect us for years to come. And these are one set of them.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, this is assuming, of course, that because of the pandemic, people also quit eating. As long as people continue to eat, these jobs will remain, but in a different form. So it's true that these jobs will disappear, but other jobs will open up, provided that people are interested to step up to the plate.
One thing that I've been sort of following is all the people who are working from home. And I've almost done a little bit of a research. I'm like, would you prefer to work from home or work from the office? And they're like, oh, home, very definitely. So when I look at, and I'm outside of Manhattan, when I think of all of that real estate that will be up for grabs. And
Right.
I think there's a lot of tax implications when people are working from home. So for some reason, businesses don't have to pay taxes or something. I'm not exactly sure.
Well, one of the things businesses don't have to do is support the office space that people work in.
That, and then that takes on the whole custodian group,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, those the lower socioeconomic positions.
But here again, this is like the office space is available. Why cannot that be reconverted into apartments and have people living in it? And so a lot of these jobs, they just changed a little bit, but they're still there. I mean, we're talking about people needing people. I mean, I have 3 sons. They all 3 are working from home, and they're working full time, and they're working more than they ever before. And they all have no time to prepare for their meals. And so they have the meals come in. And I mean, this also takes time. I mean, somebody else prepares a meal, they have the orders, and then it has to be delivered and all of that. And so, so you don't go to a restaurant until the restaurant comes to you. So what I'm trying to say is that the equation hasn't changed. It's just that the kind of work that people do has become a little different.
But people are notoriously bad about them individually seeing the need to change their means of livelihood. I mean, here's where we really need some leadership in the Department of Labor, for example, in coming to grips with some of these major changes that are going to happen and providing retraining opportunities and probably entrepreneurial opportunities too. Instead of passing out just money to people who are no longer working, we need to also provide some long-term solutions as to what people will be doing in order to earn money later on.
I think articles published in places where people read or on television that make suggestions as to what people can do instead of what they have been doing might help, because a lot of people do not have the imagination and just go sit down with their hands in their hand, with their head in their hands, and cry. But the thing is that the need is still there. It just needs to be addressed in a slightly different way.
The other impact would be on the transportation, automobiles, where people are not going to need as many cars. So it's going to affect the automobile industry.
How about people if they go into the food delivery to the home? I mean, they don't go just there automatically. You need cars and drivers and all that. So I think it's a shift. It's not a disappearance. That's what I'm trying to say.
But if you have driverless cars,
Okay. We're not there yet.
No.
Here-
In the next 10 years, probably almost all trucks going across the states will be driverless. That's
true.
the case. And if that's the case, that's a huge industry that really has problems.
Yeah, well,
We're in a time of change anyway, and I think the pandemic is just speeding up some of these changes that are happening anyway, like Fred was talking about there with long haul trucking. And we have as a society the question of how are people going to support themselves and live is an enormous question. And, some people are talking about the guaranteed income and things like that. And we don't know how to do it, and we will find out. And until we find out, the business expression is there will be some dislocations. The dislocation is
Just
where
a
you and
few.
your children are thrown out of your house because you can't pay the rent.
yeah, that's just like
Richard's talking about what will the future hold. And the next technology thing is Raspberry Pi, this $100 computer that apparently will go back to the future. What's that about?
Now, Raspberry Pi, for those of you who are not familiar with it, Raspberry Pi has, over the last few years, become the leading board level computer. And they make a little computer board for about $50 that can do most of the things that a computer can do. And what they have done, the Raspberry Pi folks, is they have taken their board level system, and now for $100 you can buy the Raspberry Pi, and it's got the board level computer, it's got a mouse, it's got a cable, a keyboard, it has an HDMI cable. What it doesn't have is a monitor. You can either connect it up to an old used monitor or your TV. Some of you who were computer buffs, you might remember that in the beginning of the computer era, there were a whole bunch of computers like the Atari and Commodore 64 and Radio Shack that sold a computer that then you hooked up to to your TV. Anyway, so here they have a computer, it's running Linux. They have preloaded applications to do all the internet stuff and to do word processing and the things you use Office for, and $100, and it can do most of the things people use their laptop computer for. And if it doesn't come with a disk drive, they use SD cards. You can attach an external drive if you want. And then this will end up being a very cheap PC that will do everything that most people need. And
Any thought?
$100 for $100.
Well, you still need the special applications like, spreadsheets and other things that you need to buy from somebody.
There's some, but they'll have that in their equivalent of the Office pack. There also are many things like Google Docs where you can do that all online. You know, what you need besides an external screen is you need a Wi-Fi connection.
Any other thoughts?
What is it called? Raspberry Pi?
Yes. And it's
PI.
Raspberry Pi PI, not PIE.
I don't know exactly how much a Chromebook costs, but it strikes me that the price differential is not all that great.
But a laptop is $400 or $500. And if I could do the same thing, I buy my Raspberry Pi and I buy a used monitor for $50 for a third of the price. I can have the same power that I have now for most applications. And why wouldn't that be appealing? Why wouldn't that be a kind of thing that you would get for your kids?
I'll just say that I
What's a
don't know.
Chromebook? What's a Chromebook cost?
I don't know, but I don't think it's a couple hundred or 3 or 4 at the
Right.
most. But the thing is, I don't know anybody who's actually going out and buying a real computer anymore. I mean, an awful lot of people are using as their primary devices phones and iPads, tablets.
Mhm.
There are an awful lot of people who are running around who do not have a computer.
Right.
Hard for me to understand, but that's the way it goes.
Well,
I'm
one the
thinking of,
things go ahead.
I'm thinking of a few of those young women who are sitting around the kitchen table right now with 4 or 5 kids trying to do their lessons. You know, I had one woman, she wrote to Apple and she was like begging them, please give us something, you know. I think there's a lot of people who would benefit from that. I hope so.
Right, I
Hope
think
so.
so too.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, then, moving on to materials. We've talked a lot about 3D printing. Well, apparently now, with inkjet printed graphene, we can conduct electricity and light. What's that about?
Now, the graphene that we have been hearing about so far is all basically comes in sheets, and they know how to be able to make it in these strips in these bigger areas. But what this is about is the folks at University of Nottingham have been able to solve the problem of how do you print graphene with a 3D printer, and they also showed the physics of why it will work. Because here, instead of this strip of graphene, you have a bunch of little pieces of graphene. And what they were able to see is that the electrons will flow fine through that substance. It's like they hop from one flake to another, but they move through it. So this means then you can, with a 3D printer, for example, print out something that has circuit board, is conductive, that deals with photonics, light sensitivity, and light perception. And it really very much opens the door to using 3D printing than to make much more complicated printed microelectronics and electronics. So they have been looking all along for ways to really fully exploit the potential of graphene that has got scalable manufacturing techniques and low cost. And this particular 3D printing approach looks like it is the thing that will actually open the door to the broad use of graphene in electronics.
Any thoughts? All right, if we want to move on to flight, I gather that some of you, when you've been approached to go as an astronaut to Mars, have said, no, I won't do that because I can't get steak there. And now apparently, if you go to Mars, you'll be able to get steak because we can grow it in the lab. Richard, what's that about?
Now, those of you who have listened to me for a while know that I think cell-grown meat is a big thing. And this is interesting because this is now a Israeli company, Aleph Farms. These are the guys last year were the ones who first successfully grew meat in space. And they did it as a collaboration with a company, 3D bioprinting solutions. So I guess somehow they were printing meat in space. Anyway, they are now have a major program, Aleph Zero, which is a well-funded, well-thought-out effort to grow meat in space. And, you know, the space race has brought us a lot of technology that we take for granted. You could say in some ways the computers we have came from the space race, as did the internet come from the military spending that was part of it. And in this case, these guys will be using the space race money and funding to be able to ramp up their cell-grown meat production. And will, if you'll pardon the pun, this will help them get it off the ground. And their idea is that with all of this effort that people are going into space with the moonshot and the Mars mission and all of these things, it's going to exponentially increase the number of people in space. And for them, it's going to increase the number of people who want their evening meat. And they're going to take advantage of this to get their cell-grown meat up into full volume production.
There's a lot at stake.
That's right.
Any thoughts?
I wonder why come up with something that the meat is already barbecued at the same time.
I don't know about the barbecue, but I did hear some guys talking about that they were going to be able to print a steak. And I wonder if you print a steak, can you print it already cooked? And I can just see them saying, oh, the meat coming out of the printer smells so good.
Yeah. You can always tell when you're printing it out when it starts to smoke, you know.
Yes.
Okay, Richard, on environment. Now, what's this about no longer needing light bulbs, but instead we can use wood to light up our homes?
Now, this is another contemporary space story, and it's got elements, or not space story, science story, and it's got elements that I think are intriguing. And basically, people have been demanding that eco-friendly renewable materials be used as many places as they can. And these scientists have thought that there's a way to be able to use it in lighting. And in lighting now, the lighting is a major use of plastics, like in the ceiling panels and things like this. And this is not eco-friendly. And what they have been able to do is to develop a bio-based luminescent water-resistant wood film that you can use for lamps and displays. And what they have done, how they did it, is another sign of the way things are now in science and production. So they started with balsa wood. We've all heard of balsa wood. They treat it in a solution that removes the lignin and some of the cellulose, and it leaves behind a porous scaffold in the balsa wood. And then here is the high-tech part. They infuse the wood with a solution containing quantum dots. And these quantum dots are basically semiconductor microparticles that glow when they're hit by ultraviolet light. And so here they have been able to make a water-resistant wood film that has got good mechanical properties, and if you put UV light on it, it will emit a luminescent light throughout the whole subject. And right now they started with orange ones. What color the lights will be depends upon the particular quantum dots that they put in this. So this is a quantum dot lighting device that is made from balsa wood. And this is a lot different than the lights that I ever knew.
Any thoughts?
Well, can you turn them on and off, or do you, how do you switch them off? Or do
You can turn them on and off. Since they require a UV light source, then to turn it on and off, you would turn off your UV light.
Okay.
And the fact that it requires a UV light source means that it's not as user-friendly as it might be. But this is the first light I ever heard that was made from quantum dots in balsa wood.
Crazy.
Very good.
Oh, well. I mean, if you would get luminous panels, you would create a light without throwing shadows. It would be interesting.
Uh-huh.
Okay, in terms of biology, two of the things we're worried about these days is virus, as in COVID-19, the virus there, but on the other hand, bacteria that are antibiotic resistant. And now apparently we can use one of the viruses to disarm the antibiotic bacteria. Richard, how does that work?
This is another story that to me is real interesting. And the note that I made here is this is a whole new kind of germ warfare using viruses to attack bacteria. Who ever heard of that? I didn't anyway. And so the story here is at Texas A&M, they do something besides work for the farmers. And what they have, the kind of backstory is, did you know that there are viruses that only infect bacteria? These are called bacteriophages, or phages for short. And these critters are probably the most numerous biological entities on Earth.
Mm.
And I'll just wait for a moment so that sinks in. Uh, it turns out these are also things that we don't really know that much about, and we're learning about it now. And so these phages are found in the soil and in the human gut. And so what they have found, because these phages attack and destroy bacteria, then they're looking at them for what can we use to combat antibiotic-resistant bacteria. And it turns out there are some phages that only infect bacteria whose surfaces contain cylindrical structures that are called pili, which are named after the Latin word for spear. And these pili allow bacteria to transfer genes. Did you know bacteria can transfer genes? This ability of the bacteria to transfer genes is really critical to their ability to resist antibiotics, because this way the bacteria basically can learn genetically from the other bacteria. So that's one of the reasons why the drug-resistant bacteria are drug-resistant, because they team up and learn how to get you. And these particular phages that are called MS2 phages, then they studied them very carefully, and they saw that after this kind of phages attaches to the pili, the little cylindrical thing, then the pili is retracted by the bacteria, and the phage then can attach itself to the bacteria's surface, and then the pili breaks off. And whereas normally the pili will regrow when they're infected by MS2, they don't. So it just it doesn't kill the bacteria, it just makes the bacteria inert. And they think this may be an important step, because if you kill the bacteria, then the bacteria will release typically toxins into your system. And if you just disable it, it does not release those toxins. It just keeps going around. And here they say you do not kill the cell, you just disarm it. And this is going to, they think, really, to start with, they'll be able to have another tool to use against resistant bacteria. And these tools deal with those infections in a way that is gentler on patients than the antibiotics. So this is biological warfare, the virus against the bacteria. Who will win?
Any thoughts?
Is this like, I'm not sure I've got the meaning of what you're saying, Richard. Is it you're just keeping the virus from reproducing? You're not killing it. Is that right?
It keeps the bacteria from reproducing. The
Yeah.
virus keeps the
So it doesn't
bacteria
multiply.
from reproducing. It also stops the genetic sharing that the bacteria use to kind of update with the latest information about how to infect this patient.
I'm not sure what that means.
Again,
You mean it doesn't mutate?
yes.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
and
Well,
again,
good.
the basis
Great.
for these mutations are a genetic exchange from other, or one of the bases for the mutation are the genetic exchanges from the other related bacteria.
Yeah. I have heard that someplace else too, but I can't remember where, about this process.
I had heard about it before, but not in this kind of detail, and it makes me more impressed with bacteria that part of their trick is a gene swap technique.
Good.
Well, I understand that
Yeah.
there are literally thousands of bacteria. And if we can get find a way to manipulate these things in our favor, we essentially will live forever.
It'll
realize-
change things, certainly.
Yeah. You know, I just was listening to a guy who was saying that one of the worst things that we can do to fight the coronavirus is to wash our hands too often. Just wash them once in a while, to be sure, but not too often, because we kill all the good bacteria, that are there to fight the bad ones. And so you can't win for losing.
Yeah.
So
Again,
for
part of what interests me about
an awful lot of people these days apparently are enormously stressed. So we heard a lot about how to de-stress your brain and everything. What's the latest thing we're finding out about that, Richard?
Well, here stress is an issue with life, and it's hard. The stress profile for people has gone up now, not only because of the coronavirus, but because of this election and the mess we have gone through and will be going through. And so this is a way to give your brain some R&R, and there are simple ways to be able to lower the stress. Now, a lot of people have been dreading what's going on, and dread does not make a dreaded situation any more tolerable if it comes to pass. And in fact, anticipating something will be negative often makes the outcome more negative. And so here this is just a couple of suggestions of something you can do proactively right now. And one of them is a full body guided meditation. You can find these on YouTube, by the way. And this particular form is a progressive muscle relaxation therapy. And the idea is you go through your body from top to bottom or bottom to top, and then you systematically tense the muscle groups of that part. I don't know how to tense my forehead, but I'll try. And then you release the tension and notice how your muscles feel when you relax them. And contracting and releasing your muscles like this works to lower the cortisol levels in your body. And cortisol is the stress hormone, that causes so much damage to us. And this kind of therapy works by interrupting the feedback loop between your brain and your muscles. And so instead of your brain telling your muscle that you're stressed and the muscle tensing up, consciously relaxing the muscles signals to your brain to calm down. So that's a technique, progressive muscle relaxation, and look for on YouTube full body guided meditations, and these will be a thing that can help you de-stress today. The next one is something that I hadn't heard of. It's called the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method. And, you know, sometimes people are so wrapped up in your thoughts that you can't get out of them. And you can shift your attention from the external to within yourself by using this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method. And the method is good for when a difficult emotion becomes overwhelming. And the practice is this. First, name 5 things that you can see around you in your space, out the window, whatever it is. 5 things you can see. Then name 4 things that you can feel, like the warmth of your skin, your feet against the floor, the table in front of you. So 4 things you can feel. Then 3 things you can hear. Cars, birds, the humming of the aircon, the sound of my voice on the computer. Then 2 things you can smell. And then last, name 1 thing good about yourself.
It's just a way of distracting your mind.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So it can't think about the worry.
And, you know, particularly it's a way from moving the mental focus, you know, all of the ideas and stuff that are running through your head that are driving you crazy, and centering it within your body and the sensations of your body. When you do that, actually, I know this from what I've studied about meditation, your brain changes the major brain networks that it's using, and it changes from this discursive mode that's called the default network into a more quieter mode that's called, among other things, the task network. And this is one of the keys actually to mindfulness meditation. And they've just abstracted this and used it in this simple way.
You know, you distract your brain. Yeah.
And again, it's to focus your brain instead of on the thought activity to physical feelings in your body.
Good.
Any thoughts?
I guess it's to get Donald Trump off your mind, huh?
That's right.
So moving on to our last story, what's this about eating fat in order to reverse heart failure?
This is, I think, really interesting to me. It's another story about the keto diet, which is a high-fat, low-carbohydrate diet. And what they have found is that this keto diet can prevent or even reverse heart failure that is caused by part of the metabolic processes of the heart. And what they, in the study, right now the study is just on rats, and we have some very healthy rats that these scientists have worked with. And what they found with, they were able to bypass or reduce or roll back drastic heart failure, which is a fairly significant disease. And they rolled it back through this keto diet. And it turns out the keto diet in the heart, there is a mitochondrial pyruvate carrier, let's call it MPC because it's easier to say, that is required by your heart for the mitochondria, which are the energy sources within your heart. And they have found that MPC expression is decreased in failing hearts, in human hearts and mouse hearts. So one part of the failing heart is the decrease in this MPC compound. And it turns out that this heart failure can be prevented or reversed by providing a high-fat, low-carbohydrate, ketogenic diet. And they see that the diet then significantly improves or can prevent the heart trouble that leads to these serious heart attacks, that it looks like it's a valuable therapeutic intervention, and that they found with the rats a keto diet for only 3 weeks was associating with reversing the failing hearts. And so this means with serious heart trouble, it's time to think about what you eat, and they show the keto diet has particular metabolic effects that are very valuable as treatment to the failing heart.
Well, it sounds like this would not prevent a heart attack because of high cholesterol.
It's only some kind of heart trouble. I'm not sure what the range of heart trouble you can have is. We need to have a doctor in the audience so he can tell us all about it.
In that case, it's not really the heart, it's just the blood transportation of the blood to the heart.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Too bad.
Do you gain weight? That's a big question.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Since you're going to a high-fat diet, do you gain weight?
If you have it for 3 weeks and you gain weight instead of dying, I think that's a good trade-off.
But that's not true. The ketogenic diet is the main reason people use it is to lose weight. Eating fat doesn't make you fat. Eating sugar and carbs like that is what makes you fat.
It's also a matter
and
of.
so the more you eat fat, the less fat you have in your body.
Oh. Okay, so having a lot of olive oil in your diet would be good. Great.
Yes.
Okay.
That's right.
Good to know.
And so what
Yeah,
they do with the keto diet is you substitute the carb calories with fat calories. And you can still either gain weight or lose weight on a keto diet because you still have this whole kind of balance equation where if you have excess calories coming in, you're going to gain weight. And if you have not enough calories going in, you will lose weight. They say the keto diet may also work in other metabolic ways. And I think Fred has studied this some and was telling us about it a few moments ago.
No further comments. But yeah, I think the ketogenic diet, it's been used for a variety of things. For years, we've known about it as being important for people with asthma and things like that.
Good.
Did you say with asthma?
Just a minute.
Yes, he did.
I'm just trying to, no, that's not the word I was thinking. It's something a grandson of mine has, and they're recommending a ketogenic diet to, it's a brain thing. I'll think of that for the next week. But yeah, apparently the real problem these days is really not fat. The real problem is sugar.
And a little bit of episodic evidence that supports what Fred says is the polar Eskimos, you've heard of them, their traditional diet had no carbohydrates in it because it's hard to grow plants on ice. And so their diet was fat and meat.
And right.
It turns out that they had very low rates of heart trouble until the U.S. and Canadian companies started bringing lots of flour and stuff like that and getting them to use that in their diet. And once that showed up in their diet, they started to have heart problems at the same
Oh,
level
God.
as
Oh,
Americans.
God. Oh, God.
Okay, well, Richard, thanks once again. And we'll see you all next week. Bye for now.
Good. Yeah, God willing.
Okay,
Thank you,
bye-bye.
Richard.
Good job. Good job.
Adios.
Thank you, Fred.
Interesting.
Bye.
Thank you both.
Thank you,
All
Fred.
right.
See you
Bye-bye.
next week.